Okay, so our next speaker is a man named Nick Genovese. Nick is a senior from Cold Spring Harbor, New York, and he is studying theology and film studies. He has a passion for story making, risk taking, and filmmaking. He also loves the Colts. So, without further ado, here is Nick Genovese.
Thank you. I'm going to be up in front here, but the gift of true solitude. So I'm real pumped to talk about this. It's something that I think people need to hear. It's a message of my own. So I think I can talk about this because I've experienced this. I've entered into solitude, from what I can tell. So 3 parts to this talk. First thing is the story, what I've done in the last 10 months. I think that 2015 has been the year of solitude for me. Second thing is I'm going to define what solitude is, what true solitude is. The third thing is I'll explain how it's personally beneficial for us and the implications in our communal lives too. So, Chandler still here? So Chandler, recognize this? So I began the year in January. I went abroad to Ecuador. And in doing so, I detached from all sorts of social media, got off of Facebook and Instagram, got rid of my phone. So that was a challenge because I basically dropped lines of communication with everyone I knew from home, my friends, family. Second thing that was a little problematic is I didn't really know Spanish too well. I think they can attest back there to this. Being in a foreign country that speaks Spanish, and I can't really speak too well. So this is problematic because my host family only speaks Spanish. My classes are all in Spanish. So it wasn't too easy at first. So this room here, it became both my prison and my sanctuary. I'd come back, I'd be drained. I couldn't even get a freaking meal at first. I couldn't ask for a meal in Spanish. So I'd come home just drained from a long day. I go into my room, and I would just spend time with myself because I don't want to talk to people in Spanish anymore. I want to just be by myself. But in a way, so it was a sanctuary in that way, but in another way, it was my prison because I got lost in my own mind. I kind of played these mind games. So learning Spanish was pretty tough. So I tried everything. I read the dictionary in Spanish. I listened to some Daddy Yankee. I watched movies in Spanish, and none of this was really working. And this is like weeks to months. I'm not learning this language. So a real big turning point was I purchased a Bible in Spanish. And I think I study theology, so I have a decent understanding of what the New Testament is. So I started reading this like religiously, no pun intended. But I read it hours and hours at a time. And one passage really stuck out to me. And it was, I'll do my best here. Y después de despedírselos, se fue al monte a orar. So I still kind of got it, but not quite. Do you see? I wasn't that good. So what this means is after leaving them, he went up the mountain to pray. And so in the story of Jesus, after the Last Supper, he leaves his disciples. He goes up the mountain, knowing that next morning he'll be handed over to Pontius Pilate. He'll be crucified. So this is a real experience of fear for Jesus. He's sweating blood. He's that freaking fearful. So that being said, I would go each day from my homestay in Quito to my university, which is about an hour away by bus. And each day I'd look out the window and I'd see this thing kind of looming in the horizon, this majestic volcano. And I say, damn, maybe God's trying to tell me something. Maybe I got to climb this thing like Jesus, do my best Jesus impersonation. So I wanted to climb this thing. So the last day I went to the volcano and I fucking did it. So spoiler alert, I survived, but I made it up there. You see, I'm kind of praying in a way. Again, doing my Jesus impersonation, but this was really, I'll say, this is the coolest moment in my life. I'll say that right now. This was the deepest moment I've ever experienced of solitude, and I experienced this, and I said, man, I gotta bring this back to the States. I think this is pretty cool. So I came back this summer. I lived at home with my family because I think this was the last time I could do this for 3 months. be with my family. I'm a senior now, so I'm probably going to work next year. Meanwhile, my friends from home, they were kind of doing their thing with internships. They were doing these internships, trying to get their full-time offer. And meanwhile, I have no work. So my parents were like, you got to do something. So they said, go water the plants outside. And so that was my main responsibility for the summer, was watering the plants every morning. And so I wake up at 7 o'clock, and I do my thing. I just water the plants. And I got to say, this sounds really soft, but this became a real experience of solitude. Just me alone watering the plants. I learned a lot about myself through this. So coming back to BC, it's senior year. Like, this is the time of your life. You got to be spending it with your friends, going out to parties, just being with people. And yet, I'll tell you, this has been the one time in my BC career where I've spent the most time by myself. So look at this picture. When have you ever seen Hillside empty? I haven't seen it empty until this year. I don't know why, I took an 8 a.m. class, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I wake up, I try to get up with my buddy Ryan at 7 o'clock, be the first one on the omelet line. So I get my omelet, I go back to my table, and I eat by myself. And people will look at you like you're crazy, like you're eating by yourself. But at this time, there's not a lot of people there. So this became a really important time, and I still do this, of just orienting myself for the day, like recalibrating what's important, what do I want to get out of today. So I have a question for you. I'd like you to consider this. Do you like to be alone? Do you like to be alone? And I'll say it in this way, in this frame. I could go for a walk by myself right now. I can go hop on the T and go into the city. But let's put it in this way. You go to Eagle's Nest, you have your friends there. Would you prefer to eat by yourself? And I put it in that context because I think most of us would say no. Like, of course not. I'd rather eat with my friends. I'd rather, be in the company of other people. And so people look at you. That's where I think solitude is, the perception from the outside. It's like, you're fucking crazy. Like, there's something wrong with you. Like, why? You don't even have your textbook out or your laptop out. You're just sitting by yourself. Like, what's wrong with you? And I've been asked personally, I'm like, Nick, why you're not going out on a Friday night? Like, how are you not doing that? Like, why aren't you doing that? You don't have a girlfriend right now. Why? Like, you prefer to be single? Why? And I didn't have an answer for that until now. Because I think, in retrospection, I think solitude has been the main thing that's got me through. So moving forward, I want to explain what solitude is and isn't. So you have a dichotomy. You have loneliness here, and you have solitude here. And so I think loneliness is a move to isolation and escape. So I think the best way to phrase this is you're by yourself, you're not with yourself. So, I think being by yourself, again, is easy. Like, I can go on a walk by myself. I can, do things on my own. But solitude is a whole new ballgame. It's really a whole new ballgame. But the important thing is that step one is always loneliness. You can't go right into solitude. You always have to have this conversion from loneliness to solitude. It's a long conversion. It's a tough conversion. So what solitude is, it's a deep confrontation with you and yourself alone. It's staring to stand right here in this presence, which I see as God, but for now I'll just say it's you and yourself alone. You have to dare to stand here, and that shit is tough. I wrote this little thing about like standing in the mountain, but it's tough as hell to do this. I won't get into the difficulty of it, but the most important thing is it's being, not doing. Before I get into that, it's in the simplest and most ordinary experiences of everyday living. So the Cotopaxi thing, that was pretty sick. Like that was a cool experience. But I don't think that exceptional act was what true solitude is. It's a thing that you practice every single day, day in, day out. That's how you become good at solitude. It's in the mundane, it's in the daily. So again, solitude is being, not doing. It's not performing, it's spending time right here. Although doing, it's important that doing can put us in relationship with the being. So for example, I see solitude myself when I listen to music, I go on a walk or a run or exercise, when I read books. That's how I experience God personally. So moving forward, I'm going to move into the benefits personally of solitude. So I think there's two identities that you can have. There's the external and the internal. And in the external, the world's asking these three questions. It's asking, what do I do? What others say about me? And what do I have? So, what I do, success. What others say, relevance, popularity. What I have, power. Wrote this down, but so in the world, these voices speak loudly. Prove you're worth something. Prove you have a contribution to make. Do something relevant. Make a name for yourself. Have some power. Then people will love you. Then people will say you're wonderful. Then people will say you're great. As BC students, we get wrapped up in this kind of stuff. Like my GPA is a 3.7, and these are the people I associate myself with. And I have this position at Evercore next year. It's awesome, but at the same time, we have to move into solitude, and that's where we discover, who am I? That's the only question you're trying to ask at that point is, who am I? I think that's the truth of our identity. I think that more times than not, when you ask yourself this question, you're going to come out of that and say, I'm loved. That's the most important thing that we are. We're loved. So you don't have to compare yourself with other people because you're loved in such a deep way. That's all that matters. And so you ask me, what's your identity, Nick? I can only give you one question. It's Nick Genovese. That's all there is to it. So solitude puts you in your true identity. Depth. Solitude allows you to find your own depth through two things, detachment and silence. That's what I did with Ecuador. I went abroad to detach, get away from the stream of social media, emails, all that. It's important because you take the time to reflect, who am I? You remind yourself of your convictions, your orienting values, and it's important to withdraw to contemplate these things. We need this deep awareness to orient our lives. I think if we don't do this, we become like a hamster on a wheel. We're trying to chase the cheese, but we're not going anywhere. So that's what detachment does for you. Silence, I think there's this real big fear of silence. I'll put it in this light. So I'm walking through the quad one day, and I run into my friend, who I know decently well, and we start talking. And all of a sudden, there's a brief pause in the conversation. And I could tell she was a little uncomfortable with the silence. And she goes, did you go out last night? And I'm like, no, it was a Monday. I didn't go out. So I think people are afraid. I don't think if you don't spend the time in silence, you're not going to be comfortable with it. It's a really important thing for us. Without silence, words lose their meaning. So I always think in the classroom, there's always that one kid who's just saying the first thing that comes to his head, whether he's really interested in the subject material or he wants the participation points, he's just saying the first thing, and it's oh, come on. So you have that kid who's, it comes right in here and it goes right back out. And you have another type of kid who maybe they'll say one or two things, but you always know it's going to be something kind of insightful. It comes from a sort of depth and profundity in them. So what I think they do there is the kid who he takes that topic or whatever they're talking about into silence with himself. He brings it deep within himself. He spends time with it, and it comes out in a sort of profound and deep way. So it's important to find our silence so we have depth to ourselves. Finding our center. I find solitude. I experience solitude when I'm in motion. So when I'm in a train, a bus, a car, I feel like I'm experiencing solitude then. This is a wagon wheel, or a wheel. So the funny thing is about this wheel is that you can go along the rim and you can touch one spoke at a time, one by one. But when in the center, you can touch all spokes at once. So, sorry, another cheat sheet. So solitude is a move towards our center. On this wheel, the center is the hub of all life, of all energy. When we're in touch with solitude, our actions in the world radiate from who we truly are, from a certain type of depth of ourselves. In this way, solitude is the hub of all life. So as BC kids, again, we're going from thing to thing to thing. You know, we're going from the classroom to the plex to the dorm to this. We're just going from place to place. So you're going on that wheel. The wheel's turning pretty quick. I think the more quickly the wheel turns, the most important it is to have your center, to go into solitude and to know who you are and all that. So when Pope Francis, I think he experiences solitude in prayer most. And he says, on any given day, pray for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. But when you're busy, pray for an hour. Pray twice as long. So solitude allows us to find our center. I'm going to move now into the implications for our community. And here, the gist is that you can't give what you don't have. What solitude does, this is real important. It says that we have something to offer to other people. I feel that there's a lot of suffering that happens when we feel like we can't offer anything. In this way, we become a better partner, a better lover, a better friend, a better community member when we come from this solitude, because we're most creative in our involvement in the world. All right, so I think a relationship, what it is, it's solitude meaning solitude. So I'll explain it in the context of my relationship with my grandma. So my grandma, I visited her in the hospital this past weekend. She has terminal cancer, so she's in the last stages of her life. So I went and stood right beside her in the hospital bed, and she was experiencing a little bit of, pain. And at this point, she's lost all her faculties, hear, see, but she can still feel, she can still touch. So I tried to hold her hand in a way where I let her know that I was there for her. And she was in pain, so she was holding my hand real tight. So our hands were kind of clasped like this. So this is how it was for the first hour or so. And then she's through chemo and all that. She was weak, so she couldn't hold that clasp for too long. So eventually her hands were just unfolded like that. So I didn't want to grab her or anything. So I put my hand just like that. So this is the image I have for you. I think the most prevalent type of relationship out there looks like this. It's like you have a half and a half making a whole. And you see you have a little bit of friction where there's not a lot of room for freedom. So in this way, we're kind of clinging to the other person. We're trying to possess them. We see our identity kind of rooted in them, like a Horcrux kind of thing. So I think when we approach a relationship from solitude, it looks more like this. You have a whole and a whole. You have some room to move in between, some freedom. And what happens is you have it's fruitful for everyone else. It's life-giving, it's creative. So in this way, we're not trying to possess the other person, we're trying to simply be with them. We're not trying to cling to people, trying to invite them into your home. We're not trying to manipulate people, but allow them to respond in their own way. So creative absence, this idea is that when you go into solitude, you're physically leaving the presence of another person. And I think at times we think that, okay, this absence isn't a good thing, we're not physically with them. But I think it's important in the way that when we leave, our memory fills in the gap. And our memory becomes important because I think without distance, closeness cannot occur. One more time. So we experience a little bit of suffocation when we're too close to each other, In absence, we're able to see each other in a whole new way. We're less distracted by each other's idiosyncrasies and we're able to see each other more for our inner core. So I want you to think about someone you love personally. You either love deeply, you miss deeply. For me, it's my parents, because I think since I've come to BC, that separation has given me a whole new perception of my relationship with my parents. Their memory has created something that their presence couldn't, It makes me so appreciative of what they've given me and all that. So I think in the same way, you have people who mean so much to you and their memory really is important for you. Creative impact. So A$AP Rocky, he's a hip-hop artist. And so I was watching an interview of his, and it's a really cool idea. So he, before he dropped his last album, he went to London in isolation, and he he can only be accessed by a beeper from his friends and family. He just kind of went underground, off the grid, and just learned how to make beats for literally 2 years. That's pretty crazy, but I think the way he sees solitude is, and the way he sees God through solitude is with his music. He sees God and his love for music and making beats. So I think this quote's important. We do not think much about changing the system because we're too intent on succeeding in it. I believe work sometimes get lost, and we get lost in advancement and promotion within the system we're trying to succeed in. So I think we need to live apart from the world so we can bring something truly of ourselves to whatever line of work, to whatever task is at hand. Whether we know it or not, our vocation is to offer a vision to those whom we serve. And in solitude, we give ourselves the time and space to let that vision mature and become an integral part of our being. In this way, creativity, substance, and depth can impact the world in ways we never would have known. This is it. So in conclusion, solitude is both paradoxical, active, and transcendent. The goal is to be in the world, but not of the world. So how do we do this? We immerse ourselves in the world, but we withdraw daily. Solitude is never removed from action. I'm cheating. It's a life of vision carried out through the involvement with people around us. It's transcendent. We know ourselves well, but we live to serve others. We live apart, so we live most fruitfully together. So here's my message. Here's my challenge. Don't be afraid of solitude. I believe the world is in great need of people who practice solitude, or at least one person, because I'm going to eventually need to get married one day. So call me crazy, but in the words of A$AP Rocky, so when you don't see me next, I've got a trick up my sleeve. Just know I'm out to inspire all of you. Thank you.